everyone about is that when we're talking about nutrition in here, we're not talking about like necessarily health. We're talking about goals to recover from workouts, gaining weight or losing weight based off of that athlete's goals. But we don't talk about, we're going to talk about calories, we're going to talk about macronutrients, and we're going to talk about how you use those two things throughout the day. But we're not going to get into any micronutrients. So micronutrients like vitamins and minerals, you know, like you see things as like this drink has 27 vitamins and minerals. I have to worry about deadlifts and bench presses and 40 times and stuff like that. I know nothing about vitamin K. I don't have a clue. You probably need it, and you probably need a certain amount of it, but I have no clue. So anything micronutrient-wise, you really need to talk to a registered dietitian or nutritionist or someone like that, far more qualified to talk about that stuff. What we're talking about is more getting in the calories that you need, making sure you have enough protein, fat, carbohydrates, and then how to divide that up and time those throughout the day to get the best out of it. Does that kind of make sense?
Yep.
All right, so the first thing we talk about is something called your BMR. If you guys know anything about any of this, I'd love to like have you just pipe in too. So BMR stands for basal metabolic rate, okay? And your basal metabolic rate, for our purposes, is basically where if you were stuck in a hospital bed, you'd broken both your hips, laying in a hospital bed, not doing anything, right? But it takes energy for your heart to beat. It takes energy for your lungs to expand, contract. It takes energy for your eyes to blink. So your body is expending energy at all times, no matter what you're doing, even if you're not actually doing anything active. So your basal metabolic rate is going to be how many calories your body needs to replace just that survival of your body. So for that part, we just use a calculator online. So you just type into Google BMR calculator, and then it's going to bring up this nifty little tool here. So how tall are you?
6'4".
6 feet 4 inches. How much you weighing?
252.
252. How old?
16.
16. Male. Calculate BMR. 2492. We're just going to call it 2490. So, your basal metabolic rate is 2,490 calories. So if you were to not do anything in order to just like maintain your current body tissue, that's how many calories you would need to consume just to sustain life, okay? It doesn't mean that if you were below that for a day, you would die. It just means that in order to like, you know, continue to sustain life at this point, the way you are, 2490 is what you would need to do. In a hospital setting like that, you would not eat that many calories, which means you would lose weight. You'd start wasting away, right? Okay. So then what we do is we take that basal metabolic rate and we multiply it times an activity factor. So with this gets a little bit tricky, and this is kind of like where things get interesting, because if we're not reaching our goals down the road, this is the number that needs to change. And so what we do is we typically just kind of guess on this. I start all of my athletes at 1.2. So 1.2 is a low activity level, considered low activity level. And what's interesting, most of the time when you work out, you probably work out really hard. But at most you're working out probably 2, maybe 3 hours a day, depending on the day. If you have football practice and a workout, maybe 4. But the other 20 hours, you're not doing anything. Guarantee it. You're sitting and playing video games, right? Mm-hmm. Playing video games.
So
you're
well.
sitting in class. Like you're driving here. Like you're just sitting. You're doing nothing. You're not really spending much energy. So we put all of our athletes to start with on a low activity factor. If you were working like a construction job during the day, working out on a farm, and then coming in and working out later on in the day and expending energy that whole entire day, that changes a little bit. Like if you're working in a hospital and you're a nurse in a hospital and you're back and forth, you're gonna be expending way more energy. But for you, for your purposes, pretty low there. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take that 2490 times 1.2. So I'm just gonna, it's 2988. For simplicity's sake, I'm gonna call it 3,000, okay? So you have 3,000 calories is how many calories per day you need to eat right now to just continue because of the activity factor. Does that make sense? Because this was if you're in a hospital bed, you're not, so it means you need to eat more to account for your activity. Takes us to 3,000. Now, we take that number, and you may have a goal to gain or lose weight. Okay? You may not. We'll talk about this here in a second. But 3,500 kilocalories equals 1 pound. Okay? So what you can do here is you can say, if you were to tell me I want to gain 10 pounds by August, do you know if you want to gain, lose, stay the same? What are you feeling?
Gain weight, muscle, most likely.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that part's on me to make sure it's like mostly muscle, but and what you end up eating. But what would be a good goal for you that you're thinking?
Probably 10 pounds.
10 pounds. Okay. So so for Nick here, we're talking 10 pounds. And you have till like August 14th, right? Ish, for when football starts. Yeah. So we're at like June 14th right now. So we got 2 months, right? 60 days. Am I right?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know why I put another. That's gonna look like 101 pounds. So 10 pounds in 60 days, which means we need 35,000 extra calories, because 10 pounds would be 10 times is 3,500, right? So we need 35,000 more calories over 60 days. I'm not a mathematician, but iPhones help with this stuff. All right, 35,000 divided by 60, 583. So that's how many extra calories per day you now need to eat to reach that goal of 10 pounds in 60 days. You with me so far? Following me? Okay, so now we're up to 3,583 is your goal calories per day. Do you think you eat that many calories per day? No chance.
That in 1 minute.
I doubt it.
Have you seen him at McDonald's?
I have not, but that's not how we can eat. We're not allowed to eat like
Right, but
that. Yeah.
I'm
Okay.
just saying, on average, now that's what he's eating.
Yeah. Okay. So this is where we'll get to that part later. All right. So this is your goal number of calories per day. This is where I like to touch on the fact that what you do in one day matters far less than what you do in a week, and that matters far less than what you do in a month. Okay. So the bigger scale we get to, the more it actually matters. All right. So if you one day have 2,000 calories instead of 3,583, it doesn't mean that all of your goals have disappeared and you've lost everything, right? So what you do in one day doesn't matter a whole lot. We just want to have a basis, an idea of what you're actually trying to shoot for. So in a normal day, how many times per day do you think you could realistically eat?
3 to 4.
3 to 4? It's going to have to be 4 because there's no way you're getting in that many calories in 3.
He's not talking big meals. He's
Yeah,
talking
anything.
You eat about 8 now.
Let's do 6. Let's do 6 meals, right? So let's plan on 6 meals. It's going to make our math way easier too. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to round this up to 3,600. This is going to make our math way easier. All right. So it was 3,583. I'm going to round that up to 3,600. It's an extra 15 calories. You won't be that close every day anyway, so it doesn't really matter too much. Which means how many calories per meal? 600 calories per meal. So now let's do this. Let's go meal 1, meal 2, meal 3, meal 4, meal 5, meal 6. Okay, so we've got 6 different meals that we're going to eat throughout the day. Now, if we were to just, like, a good place to start here is you take this next to meal 1, we're going 600 for all of them, right? Because that'd get us to our 3,600 calorie mark. I need you to understand this, so are you with me?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're at 3,600 calories there. Now, we run into a problem here, and that what time is meal 1 going to be? Probably. Yeah, so what time do you think, ish? What time are you gonna wake up over the summer and get food in?
Probably like 9.
Probably like 9? What time workouts? That's McNary. In the evening?
I don't know, I think they're at like 9 or 8.
9 or 8? You should probably get up before 9 then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here's my point. You've got practice workouts right here. Which means that if you eat 600 calories before you go, you're probably gonna barf. Right? So that means that this one probably won't be 600. Let's say this one's gonna be closer to 400. Okay? Yeah, exactly. Get a couple things in there, but if you eat a bunch of pancakes and stuff like that, get the calorie count high, you're gonna end up losing it. And for this case, I mean, you can imagine if you lose it by throwing up, we're in a huge deficit already then, right? So we don't want that, right? So then now we have 200 calories that we need to add in throughout the day, right? Let's say that this meal is dinner. Meal 5 is gonna be dinner. I'm gonna put quotations here, dinner. Okay? Easy to add calories to dinner. Alright, so let's take that from a 600 to an 800. Alright, so this is gonna be pre-workout. This is gonna be post-workout. Alright? This one is gonna be like somewhere in the middle of the day. These two right here are gonna be kind of somewhere in the middle of the day. I would like to have a lot of your calories focused around your workouts. So the bulk of your calories, if we're gonna add them anywhere, is gonna be right around workout times because we wanna capitalize on those calories, make sure that we could get good use out of them. So what I wanna do here is let's say we take this one because it's gonna be before dinner. Let's take 200 off of this one. And so this is gonna be 400 calories. And let's take 100 off of this one. That's gonna be 500 calories. Let's add 150 to this one, which makes it 750, and we're still down 150, right? So let's take this one back, add another 100 to this one. Is what was that? I was 8. That's 900 now. Okay, and I'm gonna add the other 50 right here. Now, if you decide you want to add the other 50 there, it's a moot point. All right, remember what happens in a day. So no, I can take that farther. I said what happens in a day matters less than what happens in a week, what happens in a month, what happens in a meal matters even less, right? So it's all like large scales what we're building up towards. But what you want to try and look at here is that the 2 times that you're probably going to work out is going to be morning and then like late afternoon. Okay, so if you're going to do a morning workout at McNary, you're probably going to come here late afternoon. If you're going to do late afternoon workout at McNary, you're probably going to come here in the morning, right? So those 2 workouts in the day, you want to structure your day so that you get in a lot of calories right around those workout times. You see how that's happening?
Or higher right after.
Exactly, and honestly, if I thought that they could eat and then still work out, I'd have it high both, high before and high after. But reality is they usually can't. So if this is going to be workout time right here, we'll keep it low before, high after to make up for it. It's going to be low before, high after, and make up for it. The reason this one's high is because we're going to eat a lot of a certain thing right here. And so I know ahead of time that we're going to add a lot of calories to this one, but it'll be easy because we're adding a certain substance here that's going to make it easy. Substance, that sounds really bad. Anyways, so this is like our basic layout of what we want to do. Now again, you could change this and say I can't eat 900 calories for dinner, make it an 800, make this a 450, make that a 700. You guys get the idea, right? So we took those meals, we divided them up, all right? Now let's go, let's talk about a little bit more about like what we want to eat, what types of foods we want to eat, right? The interesting, before we get to like the actual types of foods, we need to talk about macronutrients, okay? So, do you know any macronutrients? None? Name some things revolving around nutrition that you've heard before. Keywords, buzzwords. Hear them all the time. Eat more what? Potassium. Okay, that's a micronutrient. Bigger than that.
Like actual food?
Have you ever heard of protein?
I'm letting you answer these.
Protein, you know, what's the opposite of protein for everybody?
Carbs?
Perfect. There's one more, do you know it? this is in dairy, fat. Proteins, carbs, and fats, okay? So those are our 3 macronutrients, all right? Protein is gonna give us 4 kilocalories per gram of protein. So I should have said this earlier, but calories is another way of saying energy. So like if you go over to Europe and you look at a label on a European, like, European item, instead of saying calories, it's gonna say energy, all right? So carbohydrates, again, 4 kilocalories per gram, and then fat gives us 9 kilocalories per gram, okay? So fat's gonna give us way more energy per gram of fat. You with me? That makes sense? Okay. So now, when we talk about this, have you ever heard of low-fat diets? People go on like low-fat diets. It used to be something like 15, 20 years ago. It was like everyone wanted to do low-fat. You've heard of low-carb diets. People go low-carb, right? Now it's like the opposite. Everyone's going high-fat, keto diets and stuff like that, right? So it changes all the time. It just kind of depends on who's popular and what Dr. Phil writes in a book. But from there, we want our athletes to have a very balanced diet. Okay, so I don't want you to be high fat, I don't want you to be low fat. I don't want you to be high carb, I don't want you to be low carb. I don't want you high protein, low protein. Balance is our key here. So what we do is we take this and our macronutrient breakdown for our athletes is we want 40% of our calories to come from protein, 40% to come from carbs, and 20% to come from fat. Now initially you say that's not balanced, but remember, this gives us twice as much energy, so once we double this 20, we're back at our level balance there. Does that make sense? Okay, let's talk about something here at this point. We're about to break down how many grams of fat, carbohydrates, and protein you should have in each meal, okay? Or like give you an idea of how you figure that out, right? Here's what I want you to understand, big picture. This is your plate, okay? We're gonna take fat out of the equation here for a second because I want to talk about that separate. If we're talking 40% protein, 40% carbs, so that means like half of it's half and half, but you want them to be equal. If this is your plate, this is your chicken, and this is your rice, are we even? No. Okay? Good. If this is your sandwich, right? Bottom bread, top bread, meat in the middle. If this is your sandwich, and this is top bread, this is bottom bread, this needs to be meat, right? So if this little sliver right here is meat, and you got like mustard, mayonnaise, and all that stuff here, you got some tomato and lettuce down there, this part is not gonna equal that. You with me? Yeah. So we're gonna break it down to be like a little bit more like complicated with it, but this is our basic idea, is we can't have, like just eyeball it, look at it, right? You can't be like way off one direction or the other. This is why things like Subway, like everyone wants to go in a Subway sandwich because it's gonna be healthy for me, right? The problem is the bread is freaking that thick. And how many slices of meat they're gonna put on it for you? Like 4? It doesn't work, right? It doesn't equal out. It's not gonna work for us. You could have Subway and a protein shake. You might balance yourself out at that point, but just Subway alone ain't gonna get it done, all right? So,
I have a scale in my kitchen too.
what's that?
I have a scale in my kitchen. So.
Solid. Okay, so we want 40% protein, 40% carbs, 20% fat. You have your phone on you?
Yeah.
Perfect. You're gonna start doing some math for me, okay? We're not gonna do this for every single meal right now. I'll let you do some of this work on your own, okay? But let's take some of the meals that we have so far. So we got this 500 calorie meal, right? Okay. Let's go 500 times 0.4 is 40%. 500 times 0.4 to figure out how much protein needs to be in this meal. 200. All right. Now, are you going to get 200 grams of protein in this meal? Do you know how much 200 grams of protein is?
No.
It's a crap load.
Yeah,
It's a lot of freaking protein, right? The problem is we didn't divide it by our 0.4 yet, or by our 4 yet. So what's 200 divided by 4?
24? Oh, wait.
200 divided by 4.
50.
50, all right? Now it's a little bit more manageable, all right? So 50 grams protein, all right? How many grams of carbs?
50.
That's why I like you. 50. Some kids would have done the math on that one all over again. I like that as a test. How much fat? So you got 500 times 0.2. Go ahead. You're gonna need your calculator for this one.
100?
100?
Yeah.
That's a lot of fat divided by 9.
11.
11. So this is grams. So when you start to do the math, you're going to do the 500 times 0.4. You're going to be like, I can't eat that much protein. You got to divide it by the 4 up there. Does that make sense? All right, because
So it's like
what?
a chicken breast, just so you can,
Right.
like when I was measuring out mine and eating 100 grams, 100
Yeah.
grams was a chicken breast.
Yeah.
So,
So when you take this, now you can do this with every meal. So we got a 900 calorie meal. What's 900 times 0.4?
360.
Divided by 4.
90.
And then carbs would be, and fat, 900 times 0.2
180.
divided by 9.
divided by 9,
20.
20. Do that protein real quick one more time. 400 or 900 divided or times 0.4 divided by 4.
90.
90. Okay, good. Perfect. Just want to make sure we have that right. Okay? So you could come down here and you can do this down like through each meal that you have on here, right? And basically you're just breaking this down. This is the number of grams that you would want to eat. Now you start talking about, okay, well, what foods do I eat to get there? All right? Because now I understand how much protein I need to have. I understand how many calories I need to have, but what am I going to eat that's going to get me there? Okay? Name some foods that have protein in them.
Chicken.
Okay? Chicken. Steak. Keep going.
Fish.
Fish. What else?
Eggs.
Eggs. I like it. You're doing well. Keep going. Pork. Dairy. What else? Anything else?
I don't know, that's all I
Mom, anything else you guys eat that has protein in it? Okay.
And that and pretty much and protein
Shakes. Yeah, exactly. Supplements. Gotcha. Okay. What about carbs?
His favorite thing in the world.
Pasta. Got it. What else?
Bread.
Bread. What else?
Cereal.
Cereal. This list could go on for days, right? Rice. Potatoes. What else do people eat? Tortillas. We could go on a little bit longer, but you get the idea, right?
Which I have to buy completely separate because all of mine's gluten free.
Let's do oats here too, actually. I want to add oats onto that one. Okay, so these are carbs that you have, right? Let's add a couple other ones that people tend to eat. Sugar, just straight sugar, and fruit. All right, now look, we talked about it in the beginning. I don't separate micronutrients. We talk macronutrients. So when we talk about macronutrients, a carb is a carb to me. So a fruit is the same as taking a spoonful of sugar and eating the spoonful of sugar, okay? For macronutrient. Now I can't ignore the fact, and I know the fact, just like you know the fact, that they're different, right? So, but for the macronutrient level, and for what we're talking about right now, they're the same thing. So if you have an apple, it's the same thing as just taking a scoop of sugar and doing it. I'm not saying it's bad. There are times when that's necessary, all right? But just like keep that in mind. So let's talk about the carbs first. So for what we do, we separate slow digesting carbs and fast digesting carbs, okay? So slow digesting carbs, which one of these would be a slow digesting carb in your mind?
Pasta.
Pasta. I'm gonna call that one kind of like medium, but yeah. medium/slow. Give me a fast one.
Sugar.
Sugar and fruit. Right. You good with graphs? Graphs, like a graph.
Oh,
Yeah.
kind of.
Like a line graph. You can handle that.
Yeah.
Okay. This is energy. Which axis is this called?
Y.
Nice, good. Who's your math teacher? Give him a shout out on the video.
This Lassiter.
Nice job, Miss Lassiter. Remembers the graph here. Time. Which axis is this? Nice job, Miss Lassiter. All right, solid. Okay, so energy over time. Our fast digesting carbohydrates are going to give us a lot of energy or a little energy?
Little.
A little?
Oh wait.
How much energy?
Sugar,
Sugar.
Sugar.
fast,
That's
high,
fast.
quick.
High, quick, going. You got me? Okay. Now let's go to our slow digesting carbohydrates. What's that gonna look like?
It's gonna be like medium energy, but like for longer.
But for longer, exactly. So we'll start at the same point. We'll go not quite as high, but we're gonna last a little bit longer period of time, right? You with me? Okay, so now we get to our proteins. Proteins get tricky because every protein is gonna have a certain amount of fat in it. The amount of fat, the protein in it, dictates how long this goes for and how much energy, how high the peak of energy gets to, okay? So if we talk about chicken, high or low fat content?
Low.
Typically low. Now if you're eating chicken thighs, it's going to be higher in fat. Chicken breast, which most people eat, and tends to be low. Steak, high or low?
High.
High compared to the chicken typically. But depending on where you're getting it, it could be very lean. It just kind of depends, right? Different cuts are going to be different. Fish, high or low?
Low.
Depends, all right? Pink fish, white fish. Salmon,
Higher,
salmon's going to be high.
because it's oily.
Pink equals high.
All of it's gonna be low.
Whitefish, halibut, cod, all those equals low. Got it? Okay, you're learning, right? I hope so. Eggs, high or low? You saw me put two lines there. Think about it.
Depends how it's cooked, I guess.
A good try.
White.
2 parts of a yolk. Oh man, I just blew it. 2 parts of an egg. What are they?
The yolk and the white.
The yolk and the white. Which one do you think's got all the fat in it?
Yolk.
The yolk, exactly, right? So we've got the yolk equals high, white, low. Pork, typically high, but you can get pork chops that are low, but like bacon, sausage, stuff like that, it's gonna be high. Dairy, it's always gonna say on the label, 2%, 1%, whole milk, right? All that stuff. Supplements, almost always gonna be low, okay? Very low in fat, or they should be. If not, you're getting ripped off. All right, so something like, you take like salmon, that's gonna have a high fat content, you're gonna get this, like that. Something with a little lower fat content, you're gonna get something more like this and here. You with me? Okay. You get the idea of how that kind of works. Now, typically your meal is gonna consist of some of each. So you can't really take like any one of those like peaks as being like the true what you're gonna have. Because if you have some salmon and mix it with some rice, now you're gonna probably sit somewhere like in there, maybe. You see what I'm saying? If you put the meal together, you're gonna end up somewhere in that range. Does that make sense? Okay. So when we're putting together meals, we're gonna have like that kind of combination. So just kind of keep that in mind. When would I want to have this happen? I want to touch on one more thing here. Something that we didn't put in the protein because they're mostly fat and less protein is like oils, nuts and seeds. Got me? Oils, nuts, and seeds. We'll go with that. We'll leave it at that. When is it time? Because these are going to be really high in fat. Okay, so you do like cooking oils or like peanuts, sunflower seeds, things like that. It's going to be pretty high. So when would I want to have this happen?
Before the gym.
Maybe
In the morning.
in the morning. What is special about this last graph here? Compared to the other ones?
They last longer.
Last longer, okay? When do you think you go the most amount of time without eating? You want it to last longer. Remember that substance I was talking about that we were going to eat at some point?
When you're sleeping.
When you sleep, okay? So the longest time you probably go without eating is from bedtime to breakfast, right? Okay? So here is where we can eat a lot of fats and get that time release effect and have your body repairing tissue all night long, okay? If your body doesn't have energy, it won't repair tissue. It will eat tissue. We don't want it eating tissue. That's called catabolism. We don't want that. We want anabolism, right, where it's repairing tissue, okay? So this time right here is where you want to eat lots of fats. Remember I said we can have a lot of calories, or we can have a lot of calories here because we know we're going to eat a lot of these guys that have a lot of energy in them. It's going to bring that calorie count up really easy. So if you have like a bowl of like high-fat yogurt or high-fat cottage cheese and then like a handful of almonds, it's going to be a lot of calories. It's not a lot of food, but it's a lot of calories because they're very dense calories. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. So high in fat right here. Okay. You got me? Before bed. So with meal 6, you can go like here. You can go high fat. When is the time where you'd want to have a high spike?
Right before workout.
Before workout?
Or
So think about this. Let's say this spike is like, I don't know, 30, 40-minute spike. How long your workouts last for?
usually like an hour.
Hour. It's a good way to end up passing out when you're on your finisher or your workout, right? Coach tells you you do 100 push-ups at the end of your workout, and you just end up dying because you're not dying, but I mean, like, you get the idea. You just don't have any energy left, right? So when's a good time to do this? I have Gatorades that sit in that thing, right? Almost never do I let someone just buy one, okay? What they're for is that when somebody's laying on the ground here looking like they're about to pass out and die on me, I bring them a Gatorade and they come back to life, okay? So a good time to have sugar, that high spike, is when you feel like you're just absolutely crushed from a workout. You need to come back to life. You have to drive home. I can't drive you back to Kaiser, right? I don't want to call mom and have her come back to here and have to drive back because you can't drive, right? So like a good time to have a bunch of sugar is like right after a really hard workout. Now, if you just hop on the elliptical for 20 minutes, it doesn't count. You don't need a lot of sugar after that, okay? So this, like that high spike in energy, you're looking for it like right after. That's why, like, if you ever played soccer when you were younger, moms bring oranges at halftime, give you a spike in energy about halfway through the game. You go to halftime of a football game, have a banana in your locker, things like that, give you a quick spike in energy, right? Most of your other meals are gonna sit somewhere in the middle there, okay? So I would like to see these carbs mostly loaded either before or after your workout. So a meal like this, right here, that's supposed to be like 400 calories, like that's a good meal to have no carbs in. Make a salad, throw some chicken on it, right? Get 400 calories in, but it doesn't have to be high in carbs. You don't need a bunch of carbs right here.
Draw an arrow and write the word salad. Just because I'm taking a picture of this when you're done. It'll help me with my notes.
Right? So at a time when you don't need, so like let's say like this, here's another one right here. I'm gonna put low carb. I'm not gonna write salad for her. Low carb. Right? This one right here, low carb.
Yeah, fortunately for him, he's not picky here, so
Yeah.
that's good.
Yeah. So don't need to get real crazy with it, but I mean this would be a good time to keep the carbs low. It's not because I want your overall carbs to be low, it's because I want these carbs to be crazy high. And I want these carbs to be crazy high. In order to get 900 calories in, you're gonna have to eat a lot of carbs. But when you eat a lot of carbs, this protein is probably gonna get knocked down to like, let's say 70 at most, and this is gonna go up to like 110, right? But then that means we gotta take some carbs out of this one. You with me? To have it like all kind of balance out. You following so far? So it's all kind of like this like fluctuating thing, but you wanna end up like somewhere close to that number at the end of the day.
Higher carb on the two that you want.
Yep.
Better. Since I didn't read my paper, I'll just take pictures of it.
Yep, that's what we were hoping for. That's what we do. Okay, When do I not want this? The fat. When do I not want the time release? You finished a workout. You're not crushed, right? You walk out of here just fine, okay? You walk out of here just fine, and you need to replenish your glycogen stores, they're called, in your body, all right? So replenish your energy in your body. You don't want to have a time release because you need it now, right? Your body's trying to capitalize, it needs it now. So to leave here and go to McDonald's and eat a burger that's got twice as much fat as a burger you'd make at home in it is the wrong way to go. You got way too much fat. Time release means you don't get a whole lot right now when you actually need it. Okay? So these meals that are high carb, they need to be low fat. Where was that? High carb, low fat. So what you're seeing here is that we're not on a low carb diet. We're not on a high carb diet. We're on a low fat diet. We're just going to time them so that we make sure that we capitalize on what we actually need. Does that make sense?
Right. I'll basically be feeding him opposite of what I'm eating.
Exactly. That's why it's hard for families to end up doing this.
That's okay.
Right?
I can handle it. I'm used to being a short order cook.
Okay, I want to talk about one other thing, and then I want to answer any questions that you have. Okay. The one other thing that we talk about that's not macronutrient related is fiber. One other thing. Well, fiber / water. You should drink a lot of water. All right. I'm not going to give you a number because there's 19 million different numbers out there based on different websites that you look at about how much water you should drink. You should drink a lot. Okay. If you're not drinking a gallon of water a day, you're probably losing more than you're taking in, which means that you're going to end up dehydrated at some point. Muscles require water in order to contract properly, so you're going to lose in the end. Okay.
Yeah, I drink 130 ounces
Solid.
a day, and I'm short.
Yeah. So you need a lot. You need a lot. So like I said, if you're not over a gallon a day, you're in trouble at this point. Okay. I'm not going to tell you exactly how much. What we do to balance this fiber and water. What types of things have fiber in them, by the way? This is where your vegetables come into play.
Carrots.
Yeah.
Celery.
Broccoli. Those things have fiber in them, right? Fiber bars. A lot of the protein bars. You have to be careful. A lot of the protein bars have a lot of fiber in them. So just be aware of that. We're talking about spit wads here. Okay? You ready for this? It's going to get a little graphic. People get uncomfortable here. You ever spit wads before? And through a straw, paper, spit, through a straw. Okay? Your intestines act like shooting spit wads. Okay? So I want you to imagine for a second you're going to shoot the spit wad. This is fiber, is the paper. Water is the saliva. The straw is your intestines. Okay? If you take just your saliva and spit it through the straw, what's going to happen? It's going to the saliva is just going to ooze out of there, right? It's called diarrhea, right? Not good. When you have diarrhea, everything moves through there way too fast, and it doesn't have time for your intestines to pull the nutrients that it needs out of your food. You with me? Okay? If you take just the paper, put a piece of paper in that straw, and you just push, just blow air through it, what's going to happen?
It's gonna fly through.
It's not going to fly through because all your air is going to go around the spots that aren't covered up, and the paper's not going to move at all. You need to work on your spit wads, all right? Blow air, air goes through it, air goes around, all right? But the piece of paper doesn't actually move, all right? The paper's the fiber, or the food in your body. So when you if you do too much fiber and not enough saliva, it's not going to move at all. It's called constipation, all right? Also not good because your food then starts to rot in your body instead. Not good at all right? Not good for us. So we need to have a balance. We need to have a balance of that. So if you have too much water, not enough fiber, not good. Too much fiber, not enough water, also not good. So you actually need to watch your urine color. You need to watch your stool consistency and figure out, am I too much fiber, too much water? Do I have a healthy balance of those two things? Where am I at today? Right? So pay attention to that stuff. One thing you can do if you're really into this is you can take some charcoal pills, and they don't hurt you, but your stool will turn black, and you'll know how long it took for those pills, that substance, to get through your system, and that'll tell you how long your food is going through your system, how long it takes for your food to go through your system. Don't quote me on this, but anything like 24 to 48 hours is pretty good. You end up much longer than that, you're probably in trouble, and you end up much shorter than that, you're probably in trouble there also. You need to probably see a dietitian or somebody else to help you with like how that goes. Okay? Got it? What questions do we have?
Not really.
Okay. I want to tell you two things that are super helpful with our athletes. So, MyFitnessPal. This is required for all of our elite level athletes, okay? And so all of our college athletes that come home, it's a requirement that they record all their nutrition for us, okay? MyFitnessPal is a great way to figure out all of this stuff for you. So when you go to eat six ounces of chicken and 2 cups of rice, you don't have to calculate how many protein, fat, carbohydrates it is. MyFitnessPal does it for you and makes sure you're on track and kind of graphs it all out for you. MyFitnessPal is super useful. If you're going to use MyFitnessPal, I want you to make sure that when you punch things in there, you look for the things with little green check marks next to them, okay? Because MyFitnessPal is kind of like Wikipedia, where anyone can add anything to it, which means that some of those things aren't very verified. So I could go in there right now and put in that an egg has 67 grams of carbs and no protein. It would show up there for you, all right? So look for the ones with little green check marks that you make sure that you're looking at it. The other thing to do is make sure that your serving size is accurate, because if you put in that your serving size of meat is 2 ounces, you're a big boy. It's probably not 2 ounces, all right? So, and mom has a scale, she said, so she can get that in there, all right? So MyFitnessPal is super useful for that. The other thing that's really useful is something called Calorie King. CalorieKing.com is a good way to check on the calories of something if you don't actually eat it. So let's say like MyFitnessPal is a good way to track something that you've actually eaten. So put your breakfast in there. You already ate it. See what it looks like. If you want to know how many calories does an apple have in it, CalorieKing.com is the way to go. Much more efficient than punching it into MyFitnessPal and being like, oh wait, I didn't actually eat that. I just wanted to know how many calories were in it. CalorieKing.com is going to tell you protein, fat, carbohydrate content for all of those things. Make sense? What questions do we have? None? Perfect. Chris, you can stop the recording.